What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here with Judd Zulgad. We talked about the Vikings offense heading into the offseason yesterday, Judd. Let's look over at the defense. I think starting out with the scheme and the way that things evolved, it seems as if Alan Williams did get better as the season went along. They had two really awful performances against Washington and Seattle, the two zone read attacks. They were not at all prepared for what they saw in those games. It does seem as though Williams, though, in that defense got better. They played some of their best football down the stretch. I think you can say the same thing for the offense. But they've got a bunch of situations they're going to have to address. It's not quite as clear cut though as it was a season ago, where you knew they've got to be able to get an influx of talent into the secondary.
Right.
And what they ended up doing before free agency even began last year was extend LaTroy Guion, make him your nose tackle, also re-sign Fred Evans. Guion I don't think worked out. Fred Evans actually played really well. I think that
in that role,
in a 25 to 30% type of a snap type of role. But let's look at this. They've got a few things happening, and defensive end is one really interesting position because Jared Allen's entering the last year of his deal. All three, your top three ends, all entering the last year of their deals. Jared Allen, Everson Griffin, and Brian Robinson. Jared Allen's cap number is over $17 million next season.
Yep.
And frankly, based on the way he played this season, he did still have the sack numbers. I think he had 12 sacks on the season. He did put up some productivity in that regard, but are you going to pay $17 million for a player who, at minimum, it looks like could enter decline soon?
So the real question with Jared Allen is, do you go to Jared and his agent and say, let's restructure this? We'd like you here long-term still. We'd like you to end your career.
I don't have any doubt that they'll approach it.
We'd like you to end your career as a Viking, Jared, but given the financial parameters of what we're looking at right now, it's not wise for us to proceed as is. I think that is the key question. I think if Ken Harris, Jared's agent, and Jared say no, they're going to look long and hard at what they have to do. I mean, this team is pretty aggressive now. I'm not saying that they get rid of him automatically, but if they don't like the answer, it would not shock me if Rick Spielman, Les Frazier, and the rest of the folks sit down and say, all right, we need to explore this because that is a lot of money.
Well,
and keep in mind, too, Brian Robinson is still pretty young and I think still pretty productive.
He's 30.
But Everson Griffin is
He's a young 30.
But Everson Griffin, yes. But Everson Griffin played really, really well. I mean, Rick Spielman loves this
over
kid.
the final few games.
Right, but what I'm saying is, what are these guys intrigued by? They're intrigued by young talent that can win, not necessarily on the cheap, but not super expensive. So I think you go to Jared, you say, what do you want? Because Jared's a weird guy. You don't really know what the answer is going to be, right? I mean, Jared's sort
He's
of
not going to take a pay cut. If I were Jared Allen, I wouldn't take a pay cut because he knows he can go out in the free agent market one more time and get one more big deal. So if he says no, how much new money do you want to commit to a guy who may soon be entering decline? Don't forget, Jared Allen has played a ton of snaps. Too many, in my opinion. You can't have a guy at 30 years old playing 95% of the snaps. It's bad business.
But here's the other question, too. When the Vikings approach Jared, let's say they do, all right? Jared Allen is at the point in his career where he wants to win. I realize the Vikings overachieved this season and finished 10-6. But how does Jared look at this franchise? We know for a fact that Jared privately told people last offseason, we're going to be terrible. They were surprised. I think everybody was surprised by the Vikings' success. But how does Jared feel about this team right now? Because Jared's going to look at the offense, and he's going to look at the quarterback. Does Jared think Christian Ponder can be a regular playoff caliber and playoff winning, more importantly, quarterback? I don't know the answer to that. That could very much affect, though, how Jared feels about playing here.
Brian Robinson's cap number is $6.6 million or something like that next season, which is a lot to pay him, too. I think, though, and from asking around, I think that the opinion within the building was he outplayed Jared Allen this season, at least marginally. And remember, Brian Robinson was dealing with injuries the entire season.
So was Jared, though.
He hurt Jared was as well, but Brian Robinson hurts his elbow in week 2. He's wearing a brace there. Comes back and plays down the stretch with a severely sprained shoulder. And something that I know was really bothering him. He told me that he felt like a chainsaw was going through the arm in that game in the regular season finale. He still came up with a turnover in that game, one of the biggest plays in the entire game. I think that there's certainly value in him, and he's a try-hard guy, high motor. Yes, he's 30 years old, but he played so sparingly his first 3 seasons in the NFL. He doesn't have that same level of mileage on him. Everson Griffin is a curious one because if you look at the body of work for Everson Griffin, there's 2 ways to look at this. Everson Griffin's a moody guy. He's always high and low, and that's something that the Vikings always know that they have to deal with. And you deal with different personalities in a locker room. The way he played, if you think you can get that, the way he played over those final 3 or 4 games where he had the pick 6 against, I think it was St. Louis. He had a huge game against Houston down there. He had some really positive moments late in the season. But at the same time, if you look at his body of work over the course of the season, he had a lot of moments too where he blended. He had a lot of games where he blended. he is your primary rotational defensive lineman too. He's your best inside rusher. You can't forget that either. You can't say, well, you can move on for Jared Allen and start Everson Griffin when, all right, now who's rushing on the interior? You don't have anybody because Christian Ballard, that's not happening.
In the we are fed so much BS by folks around the league after the draft, right? Mm-hmm. When they took Everson Griffin, Spielman said flat out, this guy has first-round talent, but he fell to the fourth round for a reason. With Everson Griffin, it's true. I mean, if you are around Everson Griffin in the locker room all the time, you know exactly why he fell to the fourth round. However, if you watched him play late in the season, the Vikings have to be intrigued as all get out by this kid because he is talented. And the other thing he did, I thought, his rookie year, he came here and was sort of paunchy. I thought he got himself in better shape. If he comes back dedicated, and he's always going to be moody, but if he comes back dedicated, this kid is very intriguing. I am far more concerned if I'm the Vikings about the interior of my line.
Really, it's you got to be strong in the triangle, and I think that any great defense you look at, they're going to have that strength in there. And right now, the Vikings, if I were the Vikings looking at the body of work for the course of the season, I'm thinking that Fred Evans probably should be my nose tackle. You're never going to have your nose tackle in this day and age. You're never going to have your nose tackle on the field for probably more than 40% of the snaps anyway because you're playing so much nickel. But you can play Fred Evans in that spot. I would move LaTroy Guion back and have him rotating in the 3 technique. We also haven't even talked about Kevin Williams, who's due, I believe, $7.5 million next season. And I think that he will. Because what's Kevin Williams going to get on the open market? He's not getting $7.5 million. He may not be getting half of that.
He's been in decline for a few seasons. He's not bad. I'm not saying he's bad now, but he was a great player at one time. He's no longer a great player.
You've got to evaluate those two positions together because you do potentially have some position flexibility there. You've also got to look at what you're going to do with the Mike linebacker. And I would lump Jasper Brinkley and Aaron Henderson together there because Aaron Henderson took a lot of the nickel Mike reps in terms of in coverage. And between Brinkley and Aaron Henderson, I think they both proved the Vikings need a middle linebacker. They have to get better at the mic. They have to get somebody who's better in coverage. Brinkley and Aaron Henderson, both free agents after the season. Chad Greenway's the only sure thing at that position.
Jasper Brinkley might be a productive linebacker for some team schemes. He's not going to be here. He just is. This never, from the day they drafted him, it didn't make a lot of sense because he's not a Tampa 2 guy at all. And
he did have productivity in the run game this year. He had
I know.
Big
and there's
strips.
Some areas, but what I'm saying is overall the defense they're asking him to play is not playing to his strength.
Right.
I agree with you completely. They have needed a middle linebacker for quite a while now. From the day E.J. Henderson snapped his leg in Arizona, which was really too bad.
And E.J. played really well that year coming back.
No,
but
he
2011,
did.
He wasn't the same
But what
guy.
I'm saying is that from that day on, they needed to find a guy in the middle. So the only question becomes when Manti Te'o drops to him, do they take him?
That's another video entirely. Let's look in the secondary really quick. Harrison Smith.
Hey, where's my girlfriend?
Harrison Smith certainly appears to be an answer one safety position. I think that Mr. Raymond, the biggest thing with him is he can't stay on the field. He's had hydration issues. He's had the ankle.
They need another
He's a slightly built type of a guy, and I think that's popped up. Jamarcus Sanford was a lot better this season than he was a year ago, but is he an answer going forward? I think at best he's an average type of a guy. They could look to address that spot. Corner is the really interesting one here because Chris Cook already is entering a contract year because he's barely played over 3 seasons. He's already entering
he's
the
been
last
around
year
for
of
a
his
while
deal.
now.
Antoine Winfield, another guy who's due over $7 million this season. I would think they at least would consider approaching him about a restructure. Josh Robinson didn't come along as you hoped that he would this season. A.J. Jefferson kind of is what he is. He's a dime type of a guy. They still need to get
He'll
upgrades
bounce around
there,
the
Jeff.
league. He'll bounce around the league. Antoine Winfield, I think eventually, really soon, you're going to see him play exclusively inside, right? You won't even see him start. He's going to play inside. Now,
they wanted that to be the plan this year, but Josh Robinson didn't come along.
And they are in nickel a lot, and so sometimes he can start, but he's going to play exclusively inside. I think you probably need to sign Chris Cook. Chris Cook's good enough. Chris Cook shows enough. If he can ever stay on the field, Chris Cook's a nice football player.
But you're letting him play out this deal and seeing if he can stay out
Josh Robinson's a dangerous one because if Josh Robinson does not succeed, it's another high draft pick that Spielman has swung and missed on and or Childress, right? That's been the problem. Marcus McCauley, Asher Allen, Josh Robinson, you cannot continue to swing and miss on this, but I will give Spielman credit for this. Matt Khalil was brilliant at left tackle. We barely talked about him because he was so good. The trade to get back in the first round with Baltimore and take Harrison Smith was a stroke of genius. That was a great trade. This team was awful at safety. They were putrid last year. Harrison Smith made a world of difference.
Between those two and Blair Walsh, not a bad draft for Spielman at all. He's Judd. I'm Tom.
Robinson.
Full Vikings coverage during the entire lead up to free agency. I'm heading to the Combine in a few weeks as well. We'll see you.